Hello, everybody, and welcome to Coffee Class with Young Screenwriters. Today, we're talking about something that is a big topic, and I know it's something that is very personal to me right now, and what I've been thinking about a lot, which is part of why I'm so excited about it. It is the psychology of putting words on the page. So, really getting into the psychology of screenwriting, the mental blocks that might come up as you're trying to face down the blank page or the blinking cursor or whatever medium you're writing in. Um, so, the psychology of screenwriting and putting words on the page.
And this can apply to whether you're in the outlining stage or you're mid-draft or you're trying to get a revision. It's like the blocks and problems that happen when you try something and you're stuck, or trying to unstick yourself wherever you are in the process.
Yeah,
So
we're really going to be trying to tackle all different stages of the writing process today, which is going to be fun.
So Alexie, when you've historically been stuck and unstuck yourself,
yeah,
what has been your mind like the problem, and what was the solution? And you can say macro, like as it applies to other people as much as it applies to your particular experience. But
for sure. So I will say that something that happens to me a good amount is that I sort of have too many options of I have too many ideas that I'm playing with, and I end up psyching myself up and being or psyching myself out and being like, I don't know if any of these are good enough, or which one of these is really me. Do I want to commit to this idea, or is this the one that I should do because it's marketable? My particular issue is this one too expensive again? Because I tend to come up with ideas that are like $200 million, and I'm like,
right.
Is this one too expensive? Should I do something else? That tends to be some of my headspace stuff is really about, I tend to get stuck in, am I doing the right idea? And the thing that for me has historically helped me break through is it's a little difficult to pin down, but I tend to get, I don't even know that we talked about this, Adam, but every once in a while, something happens where I feel mad. Mad isn't quite the right word, but it's somebody makes a comment or will say something like, I don't know, you haven't written that thing, or I don't know exactly what it is, but it's something switches in my brain and I'm like, oh no, I'm going to write this thing now. It's like a mental shift where I go from it being sort of a wishy-washy thing that I'm just kind of working on to a gear change in my brain, where it's okay, now I need to finish it to kind of prove a point. It's like I have to get myself into the mindset that I'm proving a point to myself, and to imaginary other people.
My version of that is I stole this from a writing friend of mine. He basically said, if I can't write 30 pages in a week, I suck. It's not even good pages, but if I just can't write, if I lack that ability, I suck, right? I have a personal failure, right? And I think that doesn't work for everybody. There's some people who they need the positive, or they need the positive affirmation or versus rather than punishment, right? It's the carrot or the stick. I'm personally more of the stick person. It seems like you are too. You need to bully yourself or create a narrative being oh, I should do this. I'm supposed to be a writer. Why am I not writing? And listen, we've all gone through periods of time. For me, the pandemic was really rough for me in my personal writing. It broke my routine, and I didn't write as much as I really wanted to, and that's kind of, but kind of renegotiating my relationship with what I do. The things that I used to do when I was young, I mean, they still work. I used to do all-nighters. I used to stay up till 3 a.m. and just keep going. There's something about that environment that felt like the rules didn't apply. Almost that I was doing something. I'm staying up too late. I'm doing something I'm not supposed to be doing. And that's kind of the fun energy that makes me want to be creative. Rather than being an adult and all right, it's 7 o'clock. I'm gonna get my pages in the morning. That has worked for me too, but what's worked for me recently has been being really bad. And even just earlier this week, I stayed up till 5 a.m. and I wrote 20 pages that night. I needed to do that with this particular project because for me, revision is easy. I can revise until the cows come home. Once I have like a physical thing, I don't have blocks because I have a process I trust. We could talk about process in a minute, but like what gets me stuck is because I have this narrative about like, oh, I shouldn't judge a first draft, but I put off sometimes finishing a first draft because like I have this narrative of being like, oh, it's not real yet. When it's real, I can like, I can judge it. And if I'm feeling kind of like I have doubts over a project, I can put off judging it until the first draft is done. Like I don't want to like have to like look at it and be like, oh God, this isn't working. This is terrible. But that's all specific to me and you specific to you. But like, I think everyone gets stuck somewhere.
For sure. I think for me, it's like, it's interesting because when you were kind of phrasing it, like it sort of comes down to like, are you nice to yourself or are you like a mean motivator to yourself?
Yeah.
And I think what's interesting is that I know for me, it's like I need different things at different times. And it's just a lot of times in particular, if I get really, really stuck on the stage, that's when I need my brain to kind of just kick to a different level of being like, you know what? F them, like F everything that's happened before. It's done. You just need to sit down. You need to write this. You need to do this. That's it. And it's kind of like mean, determined mode. But in general, for all the other stages of writing, which we can get into in a second, like later in the process, I need to be very nice to myself or I get stuck. So like, say I've committed to an idea and I'm like, I'm sure that this is what I want to do and I'm in it and I'm going. At that point, it's like I need to have the most understanding in the world for myself. And like I need to trust myself. And it really comes down to that revision process of like, I need to trust that my future self knows how to sort this out and that I need to just get through this, like just put words on the page, doesn't matter if it's bad. It's like this really dramatic shift from what gives me over the hump to committing to an idea and then being really nice to myself while I'm writing. It's kind of it's like an odd little dance.
I completely agree. You have to be nice to yourself when you're writing, but sometimes you have to bully yourself to show up.
Yes, that's kind of what it is for me. Yeah.
But like Theo always talks about writing should feel good. I agree. Writing should feel good. You are creating worlds. You're making characters talk to each other. Revising and fixing problems, especially ones that are like deep seated and structural, that can be painful. But like the act of creating can feel good. But it's hard to show up. It's hard sometimes to when you lose a momentum. It's hard sometimes to regain it. And I think there are times where you can lose momentum in the picking an idea phase. That happens to a lot of people. They'll be like, "Oh, the idea needs to like feel like a bolt of lightning out of the blue, and I'm inspired, and suddenly the angels are singing, and I don't even believe in angels, but they're singing, and I've got to write this idea." And some people get stuck there. Some people get stuck in the drafting phase. That's me, first drafts. And then some people get stuck after that in the revisions, right? So like, oh my God, I've got to fix this. Personally, for me, I love fixing things. I can fix things forever. Once I have a thing, it's like, great, I can make this better.
Same.
And Alexie, you were giving a facial expression that like you were the first person in the scenario where you want the angels to sing to you.
I want angels to come down and tell me that it's the right idea. That's what I think that you and I are similar in that once it's on the page, we are golden. Like we are great to go. But for me, it's really about like choosing the idea that I'm going to commit to that gives me the hardest part. And then you know me, once I've committed and once I'm like, okay, I'm going to make this work and I have the outline, I write the whole script in a weekend. Like that's my process. I don't get stuck there. I get stuck at the idea. And then you're saying that you get stuck in the writing a little more.
Yeah. So, I mean, everything, I think every writer experiences some spectrum of these problems at different places in their life, right? Like where they are in their career and life. And also, like you said, there's some periods of time where writing is easy and editing is hard. Some period of times that finding an idea is hard and everything else is easy. I think it's different for different people. But there are the universal things, like you were saying, trust your future self.
Gotta trust yourself and the process that you found, right? That's, I guess, something that I never struggle with anymore. And maybe that's because we've been teaching it for a while and because John was my teacher and I really trusted him. I trust the process that I have now so completely that like it's not even a question for me anymore. It's like when I'm writing, the issue for me is never, is this the correct next step? Like, am I approaching this right? It's more like, am I plugging in the right variables, right? Like it's interesting because I guess that must have been something that I struggled with at some point, but at some point between now and 10 years ago, I stopped worrying about my process like entirely.
Well, think of how much energy it takes to worry about what should I be doing?
Yeah.
Right? Like telling a story is hard enough. Writing characters and making them feel true and writing words that you don't hate, that's hard. But like also asking like, oh, should I be doing this at this is
yeah.
Did I end to how long should act 2 be is a question that will get you out of the story and start thinking about things that don't really matter, arbitrary things. Whereas if you set on a structure, you're chunking information, right? Like, and I don't just mean structure in story, I mean structure in like your approach. Like if you, for example, like have a very particular process of outlining, let's just say it's like our tentpole project, or maybe your own version of outline, that even the Blake Snyder beat sheet, that's a way of chunkifying information. So you don't have to think about process. You can just be thinking about the thing and be using it as a tool. And, whether or not that's like a template or a questionnaire that just get you started in outlining, or it's the actual revision process. Like for example, I chunkify my process historically by handwriting first drafts, transcribing that draft into a word processor, and then printing out the document and then line editing the document and then inputting those changes. I have created chunks of the process so I can have confidence where I don't even think about, oh, what am I going to do next? Which feels right. It's like, oh, I'm just going to get to the next step. I'm going to get to 110 pages. I'm going to transcribe this document into this processor. I'm going to print out this processor and write on it. And through that process, I'm making all these little decisions that are focused not on, what should I be doing? But, oh, do I believe this character? And I don't ask that question until it's time to ask that question, right? In first draft, I don't ask, do I believe this character? In the first draft, I'm just trying to get to the end of the story.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And so I want to clarify like what you mean by chunking. For you, chunking is kind of like the bigger categories.
Yes.
The bigger steps that you follow. So like chunk 1 might be choosing your idea. Chunk 2 might be, okay, now I'm going to make a tentpole document or a logline or whatever it is. Chunk 3 might be, I need to finish this thing. Right. So it's like the big categories of making
it's how I chunk. It's how I approach the whole process so I don't get stuck at places, because I used to get stuck I am that type of person who, if I write a sentence in a word processor and I hate the sentence, I'm going to rewrite the sentence. And
so it's like phases.
Yeah, that's my way of getting away from stasis and to make sure I'm always moving. That's what works for me. Some people can't stand free handwriting drafts. Some people don't like printing things. That's totally fine. But like, you have to find your version.
So it's like, for me, I think the way that my brain categorizes that is that you would go in and you'd say like, I am in phase 1 or I am in stage 1. Yes. And what stage 1 means is that I am looking for these things. And in addition to that, there are things that I don't do in stage 1. So like in stage 1, I'm never asking the question, do I believe this character? In stage 1, I'm asking, is this idea exciting to me? Is this something I want to stick with? Would I see this movie? Those kinds of questions. And so you kind of talk yourself into separating stuff out so you can't psych yourself out.
Yep.
So it's like, so stage 1 is like idea, stage 2 is like outlining, stage 3 is maybe writing, and stage 4 is revising. I think that makes a lot of sense to me. It's like, yeah, because that way, you know, it always, limits and boundaries always help, because I think that a lot of writer's block is not, in my mind, writer's block is like the opposite of not having ideas. It's having too many ideas usually.
It can be having too many ideas. It can be choice paralysis. It can be fear. It can be confusion. It always comes from something outside of the impulse to create that gets in the way of the impulse to create. And sometimes that can be, my personal life's a mess right now, and I'm not messed up enough to use that in writing, right? So,
So I have so what kind of self-talk do you, as you're sitting there writing pages, like just getting super personal, like what kind of self-talk do you have? Like in that moment, are you telling yourself like, I'm great at this, this is going to be awesome? Or are you really like, are you trying to like reserve judgment? Like, how do you kind of get yourself through that stage?
Well, this is specific to me, but I'm a very hypercritical person with a huge ego. So like I'm very analytical, but I also think I do not lack for self-esteem personally. Like when I write a sentence, I'm usually like, damn, I'm good. That's but the way that messes me up is when things aren't working. Sometimes things I would fall in love with, like I'm one of those people who like would fall in love with things that aren't working, and that could like hurt the overall work. It's like the story of what motivated me to get there. The aspiration sometimes creates attachment to things that need to change, which is why I so embrace process, because I don't want to be reserving judgment, because if I do, I'll start liking things and I'll start falling in love with my voice, the sound of my own voice, which I already do because I have a huge ego. But like by creating the chunks, it separates me. So like when I am in the moment and I'm writing, I'm not thinking, I'm showing up, right? Like I'm trying not to think about my idea of myself writing the story. I'm just trying to like get it done. And actually, I have this thing where I talk myself into the stories too much.
Really?
Where and this is a mistake I've made so many times in my life personally, where I talk about a story so much that I like the story I talked about is not one I can even write. It's not the one that I end up writing. So like when there's a difference between what the pitch I fell in love with, and this doesn't, I still think you should verbally pitch ideas to make sure like, oh, this is the thing right thing. But like I would talk so much about the idea before I'd written it that when I actually started writing it and finding different things, it would create mental confusion, because I'd be like, oh wait, this isn't the thing I was hyping my friends on. This is turning into something else. Like, this is not as funny, or funnier, or whatever. This is not what it needs to be.
So you and I have lately talked about kind of the benefit of sharing your idea with friends versus keeping it a secret. And I think that there's
a spectrum.
Yeah, there's like pluses and minuses to both. And I think what you were just saying reminded me of that.
I think this is just for me, you should have a public project and a secret project. You always should have a secret project you don't tell people about. That's and even if you never finish it, you should always just or you move on to a different secret project. I think you should have a secret project, and you could tell people like what it is, but like don't like go into depth about it. I mean, for me, there's that that's how I got into writing. Honestly, if I started telling people about story ideas before I had the craft to execute them, I would have been paralyzed. Like the whole idea was like, I'm gonna write something. I'm not gonna tell anybody about it. And there's just a power there. It's motivating. It's kind of, it has its own, it gets me to show up more personally. It has historically. But that being said, sometimes like you've got a job and you're talking it out, and you like, sometimes you've got to do that. I find that I fall in love, that falling in love with my own voice problem happens with projects that I really like, I feel like identify close with my voice. Like, oh, this is the thing I'm supposed to be writing, or like, rather than like, oh, this is a collaborative project or a co-writer, something that like isn't close to my mental image. Like if I was adapting a personal life experience that was really close to me, and I started telling people about that one, I'd probably lose a lot of energy with that. That's a story I should probably keep as a secret. Whereas if I was writing like a high concept thing, or I don't know.
Yeah, it's like, I think that that's a lesson I learned recently, because it's like, for me, it really matters when I share my idea with other people too, because I need to lock in on the journey that resonates with me personally before I start getting friends to weigh in on stuff. So like, for example, Adam, you are like the person I want to ask when I have my tent pole done, right? Because you look at the tent pole that I have and you're like, this midpoint, this ultimate test. And you, a lot of times, I think for a couple projects, you've said like, I think your ultimate test could be a stronger midpoint, and moving things around once the overall shape is there. And like, once I've really identified, this is the theme I want to play with, that kind of a thing. Where I run into trouble is when I ask for people's opinions in my idea stage before I have a tent pole. And it's like, you get a bunch of like what ifs, and you have other people, intentionally or not, a lot of times, kind of playing with their own themes, or like asking questions about the theme. For me, I've realized that it's basically, the long story short, is that it's important for me personally to lock in my theme before I let other people in, or else I'm just going to stay in this like in between land forever.
And different things excite different people too, right? Like there are some people who they can't ever think about theme until the project's over. You know, I mean, I think the young screenwriters approach is to be very cognizant of like character flaw, and to like articulate that as like a coherent concept in the film, just to define that for people who are listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then, so there's a couple techniques that I wanted to talk about that are super specific, that are very much like, these are exercises that you can do to help you get unstuck, that I know we talk about in writing the feature, that I wanted to bring up now, that I think are super helpful. For like, when you get stuck outlining in particular, and like making sure that your story is smooth and helping you through those stages. So one of them that I wanted to talk about is this idea of a story circle. So it's still kind of psychology, because for me, it's like, say I'm at a stage in making in planning my script, and I have like a few beats that I think are really strong and I really, really like them. And then I keep staring at it for too long and I'm like psyching myself out. Sometimes I just need a few more anchor points to convince myself to stick with the project. So one thing that you can do is you do a story circle. So you can literally draw a circle on a piece of paper, pretend like it's the face of a clock, right? And midnight is the beginning and the end of your script. 6 o'clock is halfway through, blah, blah, blah. Map it out. That's how many pages / minutes is one full turn of the clock. Your script is one full turn of the clock. And you start mapping out where different events happen. And something that can be helpful is imagining that anything that's directly across the face of the circle. So, Adam, maybe you could help me describe this better.
Yeah. So if it's at 1 o'clock,
yes,
it's it is right across. 1 o'clock is directly across. 1 o'clock is directly across from 7 o'clock.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah. And so the things that happen directly across the clock from each other are opposites, or are connected in some way. So if I have a knife at 1 o'clock, then at 7 o'clock, someone gets stabbed. If I like meet a romantic interest at 2 o'clock, then at 8 o'clock, maybe I go out with them. Maybe we break up. Maybe we kiss. Like, there's all these things that are basically set up and payoff. That's one way of looking at story events. And sometimes if I have like spiraled myself out wondering, is this idea working? And I'm getting so stuck that I can't move forward. Just taking a step back and saying, I'm going to stop judging myself. I'm going to put this on a clock and start imagining opposite things that could happen, setups and payoffs. Then it helps me to break through that.
It's a great way to think about connections and causality and like the exciting moments of payoff in a story. And I think payoff are the things that get us to the imagined catharsis of payoffs, reveals, moments that turn us forward, make us lean in. That's like what makes us want to write things in the first place. So like that's a good way to get us inside. And just to clarify for listeners, this is not Dan Harmon's story circle. This is a particular exercise. Although you can use both concepts. Just not a structural analysis tool. It's more of a visualization.
It is a circle. I think some people call it a story clock instead.
Right.
So yeah, it's just a visualization tool that's separate from that. But
sorry, you go.
Oh, I was going to ask another question that you kind of touched on a little bit before and just now, about like imagining the catharsis and sort of remember when Nathan Graham Davis was joining us recently, and he said that something that really helps him get through the writing process is he kind of does some manifesting, right? He imagines what it's going to be like if he gets to take his family and his friends and he goes and sits down for a premiere and the lights go down and the screen lights up and there's his name written by Nathan Graham Davis. Do you do anything manifesting like that? Like,
not in the sense of like visualizing my future success. I'm not really that guy. But I do want to like imagine the story and what's exciting about it. Like I have a version of it that I call it like following the energy. Like what was initially exciting, the inspiration, the spark. Again, what's working, what's charging this script right now? Like what's the electricity? Like, is it a particular character? Is it a particular moment? Is it this promise of a reveal that I'm going to have in Act 2 or something? Like focusing on like what's working for me, like what's exciting me, what's stimulating me, and trying to put more of that in the script and getting rid of the things that aren't, right? And I actually think I'm thinking about that when I'm thinking about improving transitions, when I'm improving pacing. That's more of a revision thing for me, where I'm like looking at the script and I'm like, that initial seed, that excitement, is that in this scene? How can I get it there? How can I make this have energy? Where is the energy and how can I get more of it? And how can I get rid of all the stuff that doesn't give me energy? I'm using energy loosely there, but
no, for sure. Yeah, I tried the manifesting thing recently, so I'll let you know if I have successfully manifested it. Yeah.
Well, but don't give it away. Don't give it away.
Don't you have to? Don't you have to just like tell the world that that's going to be what happens?
I don't know. I think it's going to be I think it's better.
Or is it like birthday wishes, like where you can't tell?
I think it's a birthday wish thing.
I'll tell you when it comes, not if. I'll tell you when.
Right. That's right.
Say, oh, Adam, it's that moment. I manifested this.
I do want to talk about one very important aspect of getting stuck, unsticking yourself. The people who just like the blinking cursor in the blank page. People who are, in a process and they're stuck. Either they can't start, they can't go on to the next step. There's a block of some kind. They can't write, or maybe you've just been putting it off or something. The best advice that I ever got, it's a version of show up, but show up without expectations other than that you're going to show up. Simplify. I think, and there's a few things that happen. That simplifying your writing environment is a great way to do it. Like if you've got 18 devices, maybe just clear them out and put just a desk with your notebook. So that's why maybe coffee shops used to be great, because you could just bring a notebook and your phone for music and just tune everything out. Just like work on the thing. Simplifying your environment is the one thing. You're sitting down to write and you're looking at one thing. And the second thing is just allowing yourself to play. Emotionally, don't if you build up, oh my God, if I don't get 15 pages done in this session, I have 2 hours, I'm going to write 7 pages, right? And for some people that does work. And I'm not saying daily page counts aren't a bad idea, but keeping it aspirational rather than punishing. Punish yourself to show up, but don't punish yourself when you show up.
That makes sense.
Be kind to yourself when you're there.
That psychologically makes sense too, because if you're mean to yourself when you're there, you're not going to want to be there anymore. That's just how that works, right?
It has to be pleasurable.
Yeah. So that kind of circles back to a question that I saw before, which was about like, should you suffer for your art? Like, is it better to write in a blank room, like a cinder block room, or like a beautiful landscape, like on the beach? What is better? And Adam, you said the cinder block room.
Well, but not for the reason of suffering. Because
Okay. Okay.
for the pure reason of I I can't focus when my environment's too beautiful. Like I
Mm,
want to really just be present with the words on the page. Like if writing is going well, just this is just me personally, I'm visual. I have a visual movie in my head. The cinder blocks are a neutral environment that I'm not focusing on anything else. If there's a beautiful sunrise and you know, like all of this cool stuff is going on, fireworks, people walking around, like that can be fine. I'm not saying you can't write that way, but like I'm trying to block everything out so I can focus on what's in front of me, and so I can imagine the movie playing in my head as characters are talking to each other and like, and yeah, it is words, but like I'm engaging in an active imagination when I show up. And if I have too many distractions, whether it's a beautiful view or not, like I'm not saying the beautiful view is a problem, but it can be distracting sometimes. And I would say the cinder block room is nice because it's neutral. You know, do I want to be in
yeah.
a single cinder block room to write? No, not really. I want to have my nice caffeinated beverage or non-caffeinated beverage. I want to be in a comfortable chair, but I want to be in a simple environment.
Yeah. My best writing spot ever was an NYU dining hall where I could be kind of like wedged in the back so that nobody could
Mm.
bother me, but there was like a constant like hum of chatter, and that was really nice. I liked that. And then I'm just going to tell you my whole vibe. So I sit in this back place. I'm kind of like hidden behind a little wall, but I can see everybody else. And it wasn't even like a particularly nice dining hall. It was like fluorescent lights. Nobody understood why I wrote there, but it was my spot. And I always wear headphones, but don't listen to music. I wear headphones as a signal that says, F off. Nobody talk to me. I can't listen to music while I write because the lyrics and stuff, like it gets too in my head. And then basically, we used to talk about this more, but I haven't talked about it lately. But to get in the zone, like the zone, it's like I have to kind of dissociate from. I didn't realize that that's what I was doing psychologically, but literally like I'm like detaching from being present in the world. And for me, that has to happen through a combination of like, this is a psychology coffee class, so I'll just get into it. You know, I have to feel very physically secure so I feel comfortable enough to completely detach from everything that's going on. There has to be like a hum of noise. It can't be completely silent. It can't be that I can pick out conversations. It's got to be like a hum. And then I need to just basically I stare at nothing until everything kind of fuzzes out. So I'm a really creepy person who would like stare at you and you think I'm staring at you, but I'm not. I'm just completely zoned out. I have to have all those things going for me. Then I zone out. And then that's when I can kind of make stuff play in my head. That's when I can
Mm.
like make the movie play. Is like that's how I have to. Oh my gosh, is that Carl? It is. I thought some random person quoted "Get in the zone, auto zone," because I always say that, but it's
We'll cut that
Carl.
out of the podcast. Don't worry, Alexie.
Yeah.
Um, that's really interesting. I mean, for me, I'm more of a. I think we're similar in the sense of we need headphones on, but I like music on. But I can't have any music with lyrics, and I can't have any music with strong rhythm. Like I need white noise music where I'm not even paying attention to the music. For me, the music is the way I dissociate. Like
Really?
I need to, it's a very specific type of music. Video game soundtrack music is the best because it's designed to not to be unobtrusive and like while you're doing something
Interesting.
else, right? Like it's designed to have you on a track. Like you're supposed to be playing the game and it's in the background, right?
Yeah.
I like the music, ambient music too. There's this ambient music playlist that I just love. Film score music can be really good when it's not particularly melodic. Like the moment I recognize a melody, I'm taken out of
Yeah.
right? Like, so, but
I
I
started
do
thinking
need,
about the words.
right. I can't have lyrics, can't have strong melodies, can't have strong rhythms. But the act of that sound washes me out, separates me from my environment, and I can focus. So I have a whole, one of my procrastination things is I build playlists. So I'll like download
Interesting.
hundreds and hundreds of hours of like music, and I'll like pick out tracks from those libraries, being like, oh, this would be good. This would be good. This wouldn't be good. I quite
That's
enjoy
so
it.
interesting. I can't. So like for me, it's like I will trick myself into saying I'm gonna write listening to music, and it's because I want to listen to music. And as long as I'm doing that, it is never gonna work for me. Like I'm never gonna get in the zone.
Mm-hmm,
It's
mm-hmm.
just a lie I tell myself. So I get to listen to good music until I finally just suck it up and turn it off. But oh, the other thing that tricks me into getting into that mode, if I like literally like if everything else is fine, and I just literally feel like I can't write, then the thing I used to do all the time, which I need to get back into, is I used to go do some sort of like really um like repetitive exercise. So there were like spin bikes at NYU, and I would just go spin. And for whatever reason, that like the repetitiveness of doing that and kind of like how it's like a circle that really
Mm.
helps my brain go. It was the same thing because I would row. So rowing is it's a very like circular motion of like whooshing back and forth. And for whatever reason, maybe it's like the same reason that hypnosis is all about that like dangling whatever, the necklace going back and forth, the pendulum thing.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like the EMDR, left brain, right brain going side to side. I think there's actually something to it, you know? And that's another thing that can help me switch into this writing zone.
Yeah. So dissociation seems to be a similarity between us, but like, well, no matter what it is,
Yeah.
you need to find your rituals.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's a place, that's a state of mind, it's the things you do. Like I need to have the white noise of inoffensive music going on for me to write. But if I can do that, I can write anywhere. I
I
just
need a
need,
beverage.
yeah,
That's
a
the other
beverage is
thing.
good. Beverage is
I
good.
need it.
I have
Like,
a special cup that
is it your heated cup?
it's my heated cup. Yeah. Because the thing is about I love to drink coffee when I write, but I sip it so slowly. So, but it's nice to have a heated cup where like it stays hot for like 2 hours. It's such a good
I remember when you
ritual.
got that. The little ember or whatever it is.
Yeah,
That's
that's
so
what it's called.
funny.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I have to have like my beverage selection. That's a key thing. And I think, you know, the more you can find the routine to help trick your brain to get into that mode, the better. People talk about that a lot, but like if you have different like sensory experiences, it can trick your brain into getting into writing mode. So some people might have like a candle that they light or something, like a smell or like a particular like I think that's part of why coffee works for people because it has such a strong smell of coffee that sometimes when people smell coffee, like going into a coffee shop or whatever, you just have those associations that help you to start writing. Um, but yeah.
Anyway, hopefully that was helpful for everybody. Let's go through if there are any questions we missed. Do you feel like it's easier to write at night versus the day?
Night. Firmly night.
But I was a day writer for a while, Michelle. And then the pandemic happened. And now I'm a night writer again. I want to be a day writer. I really want to be a day writer. But it's been happening at night recently.
In college, I was a day writer because I got up at 4 a.m. every day. So I had to be a day writer. And
yeah,
it worked. But at the same time, it's like ideas have always come better to me at night. And I think it's partially because I don't feel as like pressured of like there's things that I should be doing. And those things really nag at me if I'm writing during the day. Like if I'm sitting down to write during the day, I'm like, well, maybe I should finish that article I was doing for work. Or like maybe I should go walk the dogs. Hopefully they don't react to me saying that. But like there's all these things I should do that don't exist at night. People aren't texting me as much. I'm not hearing as many things. Let's see this question from Esha.
This is very common.
In the middle of fixing a draft, I would get demotivated for that story and stop believing in it and feel like moving on with another idea I have. And I would just stop fixing the older story. So this is something that happens a lot. So you said you're fixing the draft. This is a common thing that happens if you're kind of like like one situation is people who are pantsers, they don't necessarily outline as much. And you get to page 60 or approximately the middle of act 2, whatever. So if you're working on a short, I guess that would be page like 4, 5, because it's the middle of act 2.
People don't get stuck on shorts the way they do with
not as much, but I'm trying to be like widely applicable. Okay. Like you get stuck on page 60. It's the middle of act 2 typically is when this happens. If the issue is an outlining issue. So Esha, I would say that if you're noticing that it's about at page 60 or about at the midpoint, then probably you could help address that with yourself by making sure that you really lean into outlining for your next project.
Or if it's a thing where like you outlined the hell out of it and you've lost you've lost excitement for your story halfway through, really go through the mental exercise where you remember the feeling of inspiration that made you want to do it in the first place. Like really try to visualize that and like articulate what that is and try to see where it's happening and where it's not happening in your story.
Yeah. It's like, because remember, when something that's helpful to me when I'm planning a movie is you think about the trailer moments. Like what's going to be the exciting clips that they're going to put in your trailer? What's going to be on the movie poster? What's the fun of this? And I mean, this is also the same thing. It's like, what is your action verb of your log line? Are they investigating? Are they fighting? Are they finding? Are they competing? Are they like, what are they doing? What's the action verb of your movie? That action verb makes up act 2 and also shows up in all of your trailer moments. So it's like, I guess it's a matter of remembering what was the action word, the action feeling that really sucked you into this story, and then is it still there? And where are the places that it's not? Because some parts of the writing process can occasionally feel a little bit like a drag, like making sure that everything connects and like saying like, okay, I want to have setup and payoff. But overall, if you're writing scenes that feel boring to write, they're probably going to be boring to read or to see. So you want to make sure that you have that excitement through it. Asha says, so is it okay to put aside a project then and just work on a new one? I think it's always okay. I will say that. It is always okay.
I've moved on from projects. Just make sure that you are finishing projects regularly. For every project you throw away, you have to finish a project.
Yep.
You challenge yourself to finish. You learn by finishing.
Adam, is it you that said, I know it's also just like some idea like where it's like you don't mess up. I can't remember how it's put, but you don't mess up twice in a row. It was something about like working out too. It's like, it's okay for me if I miss a workout, but I don't miss 2 in a row. So it's like, it's okay for me to leave this script, but I don't leave 2 in a row.
Yep.
Like something like just That's forcing yourself not to like let yourself have that habit of
because you will be the person who abandons every script once it gets hard. Because scripts get hard.
They always get hard.
Yeah, they get hard. There's always an annoying part where you're like, oh, that doesn't feel good. And it's your job to put life into it and stay excited. It's hard work, you know.
I will say that historically, I have never thrived by giving myself deadlines. I have done that for myself now, and we'll see how it goes. But I have never thrived by making myself. I don't know what kind of personality that is. It's the personality of I don't like being told what to do. I guess.
Deadlines help me finish things, though. You know, like
other people's deadlines, like deadlines that matter, that have like a reason.
Gotcha. Self-imposed. I
love that. Crap. I'm like, no.
There's a famous Douglas Adams quote, which I think you'd appreciate. He's the guy who wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. He's like, I love deadlines. I love the whooshing sound they make when they go by, you know?
Yeah. It's like right now I have this fake deadline of my birthday's on the 19th, which is in 10 days. And I am trying to
happy birthday.
Thank you. I'm trying to gift myself a script that's done.
Yeah.
So I'm psyching myself up to believe that matters. And now I'm going to see if I actually do it. But in general, like me being like, I'm going to finish this by the end of the month. I'm like, why? I don't like arbitrary things.
This is great. Maybe Alexie, can we get like a Word document up and we can like go through our recommended processing chunking just for people, just be like, this is, if you've never written a script before, this is a way to write a script. Ooh, what's that color going on?
Where? Oh, that happens to my camera sometimes.
Very cool.
Let's see if it fixes.
Hey, there
Ta-da!
You go. Interesting.
I know.
It's like, wow, very impressionistic.
Oh, it did it again.
It's okay. It's okay.
I'm in a volcano.
Let's
I'm pulling it up. Don't worry.
Let's just do it, Alexie. God.
Get off the screen. Yeah.
Right, in my notebook of writing advice, I've got it all laid out. So I'm gonna. I found it very helpful to make this ages ago. Every time I get like something that just feels so inspirational, true, motivating, I would write it out in this book. And if I wrote it out in this book, it's something I believed. Right. I just read something that I don't believe anymore. So where is it?
Michelle said my filter is like the filter American movies do when they're supposed to, when something is supposed to take place in Mexico.
That's right.
That reminded me of this TikTok thing where people kept doing like the generic Middle Eastern thing that happens in films. And it started off by doing the music that they always do. And then somebody else commented on top of it and did like the waving heat waves in the sand. And then somebody else did like a camel chewing cut. Like it was, people are so funny. Anyway.
So, Alexa, I'm going to text you what I have here, and then you can fill it in with your own stuff. But first, first things first, when I'm first like trying to be like, I've got an idea, I want it to be something, I get a good log line. Like for me, that's where it starts. Like if I'm gonna get serious about something, like I'm gonna write it as a log line. And with the log line, I like the formula that's protagonist, inciting incident, objective, antagonist, stakes, right? Like, those are like the basic ingredients of a story that like.
Did you text this to me?
Oh, I texted the wrong person. Whoops.
The other Alexie?
Oh, I know so many Alexies.
Do you? No.
Actually, no, I know one Alexie. Oh my God,
Is it me?
I can't believe. No, I know one other Alexie. Oh. I just texted them it. Okay. That's embarrassing.
That's really funny. I'm amused. Introduce us. I've never met another me.
It's a guy. It's a Russian
Don't
name.
Introduce us. I know it. It's always a Russian man.
Okay, so I start with the log line, and then we could build that out to a template, move to carding. This is like that. That's very traditional screenwriting stuff. Zero draft that I handwrite. That's just me. And then I transcribe into a Word document. And then I usually give it a few weeks rest. So like 2 weeks rest, I would recommend. Like, don't look at it for at least 2 weeks. John is 4 weeks. I don't remember what John is. Look at something else. Write another project. The first draft is where I go through and I try to clean that up. So like I'm like trying to make it good. I've transcribed it, but I'm trying to. I just do a once over, and I've Alexie likes to retype it as a new file here. But for me, I like to print it out and line edit. And the first draft for me is my line edited, printed out zero draft. So like I would print out the zero draft, I would line edit, and then I would input those changes, and that would be the first draft. And then I take another little break. And then the second draft is like a serious revision where I do the same thing over and over again. And then by the time I feel good about it, I give it to beta readers. And third draft as something I used to call the word draft. I don't really call it anymore. I just call it a third draft. This is the draft where I'm actually like judging it as I would a script from somebody I don't know. Like, I mean, I'm doing that beforehand, but like, I'm like being like, okay, is this as good as anything I've ever read? Like, I'm really holding it to a higher standard by then.
So yeah, Adam does, to clarify, do the zero draft handwritten and screenplay format. I imagine it's not completely fitting everything. Like, I imagine you don't write the character's name out all the way. Another reason why it's advantageous to have your character's name start with different letters.
Oh yes. So honestly, what I do there is I'm like I'm not writing all the narrative description for my zero draft. I'm just like saying if there's a huge if there's a sword fight. I've never written a sword fight. I'd like to write a sword fight. But if there's a sword fight, I would just write they fight. It gets bad. He loses, or whatever. And I would knowing that I would expand it later. And for actual character names, I'm just writing the first letter of the name.
That's what I do.
And going right to dialogue. Like A is, let's just say if I had a character called Adam, A. Bob, B. Okay, they walked into the next room. Like, I'm really just trying to condense it to like the action. And when I'm transcribing it, I fill out all that information. Like I'm at the transcribing is a secret where I'm adding stuff. Like, I'll actually write out the sword fight as I'm transcribing it into the process. But I've convinced myself that I'm not writing it, if that makes sense, because I'm just typing out what I wrote handwritten. Yeah, I'm going to fill in the sword fight here, my first version of it.
Yeah, I would do it like where it's like I make it look. I like don't do complete sentences necessarily when I did do handwritten stuff. For me, I type this one, but I just do it like the fastest version, right? So it's like it's similar to that. It's like unless I'm writing a sword fight and it just comes to me immediately, like I'm like I can picture this in my head, I'm in the zone, I'm gonna write it. Then if that happens, then I'll write it. Why not? But if I sit there for like more than a few minutes and I'm like, man, how is this gonna happen? Are they gonna swoop in and do a slash and then they're gonna roll? If I start like asking myself all these questions, I would just back up and say they fight.
Yep.
Try not to let yourself get caught up in it at that stage. So this is
to be clear, this is just Adam's what works process, for me, right? That's just what works for me. Alexie's is similar but different.
Yeah, and then what's funny is that this version right here, step 11, that's what Adam is going to tell his producer is his first draft.
That's right. That is right. That's for people I don't know, who are like people who aren't close to me. Like I'm positioning like, oh, it's still an early draft, because here's the thing: at the end of the day, it's probably going to go for 2 or 3 other drafts after this, ultimately, right? Before I let go of the script. This
is like, and it's not incorrect. This is like, it's not like you're deceiving anyone to say this is your first draft. In the industry, the first draft that you give to the producers or someone, the first draft you give them is what they call the first draft. When they say like, we want to see your first draft, what they mean is the first one you're going to give to me. They don't literally mean the first one that happens.
That's right.
So when you see stuff on the blacklist, or like if you see something that's like, this is this person's first draft, generally that is not literally the first iteration of this script that has ever been on the page. If it is, then they will probably make a big deal of it being, this was literally the first thing that he ever wrote. You know, it's like, what is it that Lady Bird, Greta Gerwig, her actual first draft of Lady Bird was something ridiculous. Yeah, 300 pages. So that would be that. She's probably talking about this. Either Adam's step 4, which is the zero draft, or Adam's step 6.
Although she's a pantser. She doesn't do tent poling or carding. Her zero draft is really a discovery. Like, she's trying to find the structure. Like, and here's the thing: it takes her 2 to 3 years to write a script.
Yeah,
and that's the downside of not outlining, right? Like so you can do great work, but it takes a long time to find that stuff.
That's funny. Yes, Michelle, the Polish draft is the final step. Adam then translates it into Polish, and
Polish draft. Yes, did you know I speak Polish? That's not true.
Then Adam takes it out to Polish Hollywood.
And just to clarify, beta writers, I think for me personally, it's a combination of just people who are trusted readers. Like, but they're all people who like. There's some non-writers, but like they're all people who like the thing that it is, and I really trust their opinion, and like they give me good notes. Actually, I think non-writers can give you great notes. They just don't articulate them clearly. Like some of the best notes I've ever gotten were from non-writers, because it was like a very truism. Like an actor friend of mine who was just saying like, I think what was in the, it was harder to read after around page 40. I got confused, right? And it was a version of that, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting information, and I didn't like get mad at them. I was like, oh, you just don't understand. I was like, oh, maybe like I was convoluted. Maybe Act 2 isn't coming together.
Yeah.
Right. Like I lost sight of the objective. It became hard to follow when the objective kind of got weak or forgotten about. Right. So a writer can give you like very tactile, prescriptive advice, but non-writers sometimes give you the best descriptive advice, being like, hey, this is kind of what I noticed. It was boring.
Or this part, I kept getting stuck reading this page over and over and over. If you can get your reader to be honest with you about which page did you find yourself reading over and over and over because you got stuck on it, that's probably some of the best information to have. But for my beta readers, I would say at this point in my life, Adam, you would be the only writer I would ask.
That's really interesting.
I don't talk to writers usually.
It's really interesting, but like that's also because what a lot of screenwriters would say, like
it's the stage that I'm kind of at, and like the feedback I want and stuff. For me, at that stage, it's like the thing that's going to be most relevant to me. What I feel like is going to be most relevant to me at that point is more like, how is an audience going to take this? And so I have like, I don't know. Maybe I also just kind of lucked out that I have friends who have really strong story senses who aren't professional, like who don't do it. I wouldn't ask Avi or John. I would give John my script at the end. Like I would do all of this before I show John. John for me is less like a notes guy necessarily, and more like I think that this is good to go guy, and then he'll probably have notes. So I kind of treat John in this process more like a producer person. So like I give him the polished draft and say it's my first.
I would say in general, beta readers are not people who are like have power like in the industry. Like you want like those high level relationships to like you don't want to send people who you're afraid of annoying, possibly. I'm not saying that you're afraid of annoying John, but like, John reads a lot of scripts. You want him to like, send it to people, like you're sending it to him because you want him to help out, Yeah,
the best outcome for me with John is that I give it to John, and then John says, I know somebody who'd want to make this, and sends it out. Exactly. It's like, and if I get notes from him, that'd be great. But like, you kind of have to think about what is the person's power? Like what do you want them to do with it? And if there's a version of it that's like, I want them to send it out, then you should probably push them further down your list. Unless you have a very specific relationship. Like my manager is someone who would send it out, but because of our specific relationship, I would show him probably at that stage after the second draft. Because that's
not
like
a zero draft.
I have before, but no, it's not advised. No, actually, no, I've never showed a zero draft. That's not true. I've showed a first. No, I'm lying. I always, because like for me, it's like I do so much stuff that it all blends together. So it's like I show him early stuff that I'm like, but what is early?
Yeah, it depends. It's different for everybody. Anyway, on that note, we're at time, but thanks so much everybody for joining us. Next week we are doing The Bear.
The Bear, I believe. Yeah, the pilot of The Bear, which I have still not seen.
It's so good.
I'm very excited about it.
I've been watching more of it. I've only seen the pilot. I want to see more of it. It's really good.
I'm watching Dead to Me right now.
Oh yeah, you like that?
It is fantastic. I'm telling you what, that protagonist has a strong flaw. There's some strong flaws in there that are really. If it was newer, I would recommend doing it here. But since it's not, I'm just going to tell everyone to watch it. There, all right. Okay. That was a link to what we just did, by the way, to the Adam stages of screenwriting or whatever the heck. So hopefully that helps you.
All right. And for people who don't know, we are going to be posting these coffee classes as edited podcasts on all podcasting platforms like Spotify and Apple. So if you miss a coffee class, you can always listen to the edited version of this, where we get rid of tangents and me saying a lot.
And me saying, does that make sense? Yeah, I hope you're cutting that anyway. I hope you are. I'm gonna cut it. Yeah, don't worry. So anyway, thanks so much, everybody, and you have a great week. Bye.
End.
Yeah, weekend. Yes.
Weekend.